Hello everyone and welcome back to today's video, which probably won't be the longest thing, but I wanted to talk about this anyway. Usually we cover gaming stuff, whether it's flat screen on PSVR 2 or VR on PC, but occasionally we discuss just consumer entertainment on VR platforms, and today is one of those days. And today's focus is on live sports and how they can be impacted by VR, what we're already seeing in that field now, and my ideal scenario for the future that I think genuinely could happen in terms of watching sports and events in virtual reality with 360-degree cameras. Before we get into it, only 25% you're actually subs to the channel, so please feel free to do so, and thank you to our patrons and members who are all on screen right now. With that being said, let's talk VR and live sports. Now, VR entertainment isn't a new thing. We've had tons of videos and some short films shot in VR, whether it's just 360 degrees or 180 degrees or has actual depth. For example, Apple's Submerged short film that came out last year, that had real depth to it because it was shot with a Blackmagic camera with two lenses next to each other to simulate the eyes, and that was really revolutionary. If you want to go and see stuff like that, go to your local Apple store, try out our Vision Pro for free, it's amazing. But one other thing that has been popping up more recently is being able to watch things like football games or basketball games from courtside or pitch side. There's a couple of companies doing this. I know FIFA are doing it, X Stadium are doing it in terms of licensing out to different events and getting you really up close with 8K 180 degree VR views and allowing you to sit there and watch the event as if you were right on court, having a seat right next to the action, better than if you were actually there in person. Now, I'm not here to argue that this would be a better experience than going to, say, an F1 race or a football match, because you don't get that sense of atmosphere like you do when you're actually there, but for watching at home, I'd say this is the next best thing. But that's already happening. You can already go and watch some FIFA matches, whether it's live or replays, and watch as if you were there. What I want to focus on is what's not possible yet, and for me, that's motorsport. Now, there are some advancements being made here. For example, on X Stadium, the app on Quest, you can go and watch NASCAR or IndyCar, but this is quite limited. It's cool in a way because you can get a track map and watch the cars go around in terms of their actual position. You can also have a multi-viewer and stat viewer. So, for example, you can have a driver's lap times pulled up and a couple multi-views with the main feed and some onboards, and that is really cool. That's an application that is utterly fantastic, and I think needs to be expanded upon by the official event runners for these sort of things. But what I would really want are proper onboards in either 180 degree or 360 degrees. We've seen 360 degree cameras be put on cars, for example, in Formula 1 in the past, but they're not live streamed and they're not accessible. The teams just publish those views afterwards. So we know that these have been experimented on as actual onboard cameras for reviewing incidents later to give a wide field of view of what is happening. But again, it's not something accessible from the main feed, whether because of live stream restrictions that you can't actually use one of these cameras reliably to put out a feed to the public, or maybe it's because these event runners and the cameras don't have a way of really allowing the public to easily view 360 degree content. That's where VR headsets would come in. Imagine if, say, you were watching Formula 1, but instead of watching the normal onboard, you could put on a VR headset and see a 360 or 180 degree onboard of Lewis Hamilton or Lando Norris or Charles Leclerc's car. You could pick the driver you want to be on and maybe even have that multi-viewer floating outside of your peripheral vision so you can look and glance and see what the other drivers are doing, see the main feed, but you can have that on board as if you're on the car, having that sense of speed in virtual reality. Now, it would lack depth that things like Apple's Submerged film has because it's not using two lenses to simulate your eyes to give you that depth perception, but it would be a 360 degree view where you could look around and get a really immersive feeling from being on top of the car. So that would be amazing. And this isn't outside the realm of possibility either. I honestly think this is the way that the VR entertainment in live sports are going to go, especially for F1 if we keep that example. When I was attending the Suzuka Grand Prix earlier this year, they do a couple of shows before the race starts, just talking through several things, and one of the topics they came across was this exact thing. They were talking about 360 degree cameras and how they can be used and utilized in the sport, and it came onto the topic of being able to watch the races in VR at home, and the commentators and camera tech engineers there said this was a real possibility for the future. So it's something they're actively thinking about and experimenting with. Obviously, it's a conversation of how much weight gets added and how these cameras are housed properly and how it's rigged up to get that feedback to the viewer in real time. But even if it gets to the point where we can just view them after the fact in VR and not live, I would still kind of take that to be able to see an onboard lap from the T-Cam, but in 360 degrees. That would be nuts. Another reason that I think this is probably going to happen over the next couple of years, not just because they've said it at the Grand Prix I attended, is because Apple are now looking to acquire the rights to Formula One in the US. I don't know what this means for F1 TV and their holding of the Formula One license, but at the moment ESPN are also the other provider of live Formula One. If Apple got the rights, well, Apple have their own VR headset, the Vision Pro, and I believe there's an F1 app on the Vision Pro that allows you to see multi-views and see a track map and driver stats all at the same time in VR and MR, so this just makes sense. With the success of the F1 film and them trying to get the rights to it, it would make sense to try and incorporate this sport into live viewing on their VR headset somehow. It just makes sense to me. And this would be the ultimate way of viewing a sport like this. Obviously, this isn't really applicable to other sports. Like football, you can't have an onboard with a football player, but at the moment you can have the, off-pitch side views where you're sitting around the front benches, which is still really cool, and that's being done now. But in the future, hopefully we see something like the F1 example. Now, this does come with downsides though. This isn't all sunshine and rainbows. The issue here is that when you have something like VR, where you have a headset on, it takes away from the social aspect of watching a sport like this. For example, if I'm watching free practice, say alone, if nobody else is around, then this would be cool because I can put on my headset and I'm on my own anyway, so it doesn't matter that the experience is kind of isolating. But if I'm watching a race, which I typically do with a couple other people, I can't really sit there and put on a VR or MR headset because it's just not very sociable and not very fun. I don't want to do that. I want to be able to talk and interact with everyone around me while we all watch the race on the big screen. So it does have its limitations. There are apps that allow you to circumvent this. For example, I think X Stadium allows you to jump in and host a virtual watch party so you can all sit in the same room, a bit like big screen. But again, I don't want to have everybody sat in the same room with a headset on when we could just be watching the TV and actually see each other. This would work for long distance stuff though, so that's quite cool. But as for in person, there's still that limiting factor of social awareness and space that virtual reality has to overcome. Overall, this is a great development though, and I'm excited to see where it goes. And a feature like this, if it was locked to Apple's ecosystem on the Vision Pro, would honestly get me to consider buying one. It's that cool. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think of this in the comments below. Are there any sports you'd love to see live in virtual reality? Maybe even concerts as well, which would be really cool. Let me know, and I hope to see you all in the next one.